Welcome to a new episode of Tell Me Your Radio Story. My name is Dan Blackman. I talk to radio professionals and ask them, how did you start in radio? What drew you to this medium? What was your journey and where you are now? And I'm very pleased to have a former colleague of mine in the B101 days in Philadelphia. Her name is Joan Jones. She's currently the morning news anchor on WTOP 103.5 FM in Washington, D.C., a top-rated station, if not the top-rated station in Washington, D.C., and a top-rated news station across the entire country. Joan, welcome.
Wow, what a big intro. Thanks, Dan. So good to see you. My goodness.
So good to see you. How are you?
I am, well, really well. And how about you?
I'm doing well. You look great.
You look the same. You look the same. How did you do that?
Thank you. I recently lost about, in the last 2 years, I lost 30 pounds.
Wow, good for you.
I had a bad diet, and I started getting a gut. And I'm like, I got to take care of this, and I did that. And basketball helps.
Oh, yes.
Playing basketball and just doing, being active. And
you can still play basketball and not seriously injure yourself is pretty good.
Yeah, the guys make fun of me. I got to use the icy hot before. That's the pre, and they could smell me from a mile away.
You're the guy that smells like menthol.
But yeah, I still love doing that. So, and just trying to remain happy. And, radio helps, having fun. So I know your radio story working for you with so many years at B101 in Philadelphia. But tell everyone that's viewing right now your radio story from the beginning. How did you start? What drew you to radio?
Well, I have to tell you that radio was not my first choice. I actually came out of school, which was William Patterson University up in North Jersey, and was working. I interned at WABC TV in New York, Channel 7. And I was on the assignment desk there with goals, of course, of doing television news. But my first job that I wanted to continue working there, but they didn't have the budget. So I started working at a little radio station in Marmora, New Jersey, Cool 98.3. I don't know if you know that station, but it's Ocean City. And I was doing news on it's an oldie station. And, when the radio bug bites you, there's no turning back. So I worked there for a while. It was a very small morning show kind of thing. And then just, worked my way up. I went up to WJRZ in Toms River. And then from there jumped over to Philly. And I was at filling in at Magic for a while. Worked at the Station of the Stars, which was really cool because I got to see some of the people. I remember one day working on a Saturday, and a big presence came into the room, and I looked up and it was Wee Willie Weber. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is like my childhood dream come true. And so that was, that stop. And then I moved over to, WWDB, the talk station, and I did news there. If you remember Michael Smith. And then from there, jumped over to the traffic center at, it was, I guess, express traffic at the time, and started filling in the mornings at B101. I guess they didn't have a morning show, so I was just sort of there filling in. And then they brought Chris McCoy over to the mornings. And at the time, there was no program director. So we thought, we're going to get away with what we can and make a show out of this. And we launched sort of our Chris and JJ show. We named it. We had benchmarks that we really enjoyed doing. I can't remember if the impossible question was that early on in the show, but we just had some fun with it, and it grew. And despite, I'm not so sure that they really wanted a show. They wanted it to be about the music. But we made it a show anyway, and it was super successful, and it was so much fun to do. And I loved every minute of that job. That was the most fun I had ever in radio. Because we did, first of all, we worked with a really incredible bunch, and you among them. We just had a lot of fun there. But the being able to go out and do be with people all the time, because we would go to different events and travel a little bit, being out with people and talking to listeners and sort of being a part of their lives, that was the crazy best time ever. I still hear from people who will send me a message, an email message, or, contact me on Facebook and say, I remember when Tyler was born, because if you remember, I called the station when he was born, and I was in the delivery room still. People still remember those things. People remember how we covered 9/11.
I was going to talk about that later, too.
Yeah. So just being that part of people's lives, I just still hear from people, from B101 days. And that was just the best, really just the best.
So the station you mentioned, the Station of the Stars, of people that are out of the viewing area in Philadelphia, that was WPEN. And those, the big, huge stars, guys and women that were on the air for 15, 20, 25 years. It just became staples. And you did too by being on B101. Now, you didn't mention this. I do know you were on a cable TV. You were doing cable TV news in South Jersey at one time, correct?
I was actually not really doing news, but we did.
Lifestyle?
What's that?
Lifestyle stuff?
We did man on the street interviews. It was really cool. I can't remember the guy's name that I launched this with. His name was Norm. And we would go out on the street and ask questions of people on the boardwalk and on the streets in Ocean City. And it was a lot of fun to get the responses and to splice them together and just have fun with it. It was issues of the day or really nothing issues, It's just fun to do.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the great bunch we had at B101, and you can't make chemistry. It just happens. So just to fill in everyone that's viewing, I actually started mornings. I started at B101 in '93, and then when they hired Chris, when I was doing mornings, I went through 4 different newscasters. They weren't in the building with me. They did news and traffic, and then they hooked you guys up.
Yeah.
And for a little while, we didn't have a program director. Your thoughts of when you can't make chemistry, it just happens, that magic. Like,
yeah.
How is that? Because you need that, especially waking up early in the morning and just dealing with that, right?
Oh, for sure. A lot of it is taking yourself out of it. So it's really just knowing your audience, knowing the other person, and knowing what you can make between the two of you. So you kind of have to take out selfishness and anything of that nature and just go with the punches. And Chris and I just had such a blast cooking up the little things that we did, the impossible question. And, one of the more fun things we did was we had snow candles. I don't know if you remember when we launched those, the Chris and JJ snow candles, and people loved that. It was great. And the management hated it. And just, when it happens, it happens. And what you need to do is to just leave yourself behind and make a show. And
so a couple of thoughts when I mentioned these names. So he was on before you guys, and he became your kind of like producer, Jason Lee.
I love Jason. He we still get together, like we'll call each other, using Skype or something every once in a while, and have a cup of coffee and a bagel while we're talking to each other, because we don't, we live too far apart now. So yeah, he did produce for us. He had great ideas. He is the consummate radio guy. Like, he geeks out on radio, and it's so fun because he loves it so much. And just being a part of his life, I was supposed to be going to his wedding. but the day of the wedding, I had a baby. I couldn't go. And so he always reminds me,
Yeah.
hey, Joan, you didn't come to my wedding.
Chris McCoy.
Yeah. Boy, Chris and I had so much fun together, and we lived not far from each other, which was fortunate for us because sometimes we'd have to drive each other in. It was nice because our kids were his kids were a little bit older than mine, but it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that we could get together and have some fun, sort of away from the microphones. We happened to have to travel a lot for things that we did, going to morning show boot camp and we went once to Disney World to broadcast live from the Disney studios. And, we spent a lot of time together. And so you have to like each other in order to spend that much time together. So, we had a good time. We were really fortunate.
A guy that followed you on the air, and then he would be leaving when I came in, Juan.
Juan was just the coolest character ever. Nothing rattled Juan. Nothing rattled Juan. And he was a steady Eddie. I mean, just so steady. And I knew his wife, Pat. And just the two of them were just the most adorable couple ever. Just very wonderful, just wonderful people.
He has the greatest sense of humor. That's how
he does.
he
Yeah.
and I connected, because we both have that dry sense of humor, and we just be cracking up in the studio.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun. Do you remember the anniversary party that we had at the Bellevue in Center City?
Yes.
Hall & Oates played.
Yes. Oh, yes. Wow. And remember, I think they weren't talking to each other at that time.
Yeah, Chris and I talked about this. They had a fight, and you could see the tension, and they had to meet fans, and they were back to back, and you could see. But once they got on stage,
boom, it was off. Yep, and that's what I'm talking about. It's just the showmanship. If you've got to have the showmanship.
Absolutely. You mentioned 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are on the air when the second plane hits. Because when the first plane hit, everyone was, it might be a commuter plane. They don't know.
Right.
And you see it live. Just being on a music station, then going into news mode entirely. How was that?
First of all, it was the most frightening day of my life. And I remember when that second plane hit thinking, that's it. There's no mistaking. You can second guess that first one for a couple of minutes, but when the second one happened, there's no question now what's going on. And so we stayed on the air for a while. And all we could do was check the wires. Of course, at that time we had physical wires to have to check. And relay what we were seeing on the television, because we knew that our audience was people in their offices, and they would be wondering what's going on. And so we needed to tell them what was happening so that they didn't have to turn on a TV or, step away from their desks. We could just keep informing them. And we did that for a while. But of course, my daughter was 1 year old. And that meant that my boys were 6 and 8. And my heart was wondering if they were going to be okay. And if at that point, you don't know, like we knew it had come to Pennsylvania, and we knew that a plane had hit the Pentagon. So how much more widespread would it be? And would I be able to get back across the Walt Whitman Bridge to go home? And so my quest was, I'm willing to do this for a while, but I need to make sure that my family is safe. And so I was able to go home at some point finally. But as you know, the days and the weeks after that were just the most somber and strange ever, just ever.
We did news, but we did not play music, I think, for over a week.
Yeah.
We just did wall-to-wall news. I think we carried Channel 10 and their
Yeah.
news, and then we would break in with updates local, and you guys did all the stuff in the morning. So yeah, that was I was with my daughter, who was about a year and a half old,
Yeah.
watching her in the morning, and I saw the plane live on the air, the second plane, and I was actually calling you guys. I was calling Chris, and just you guys were so busy doing stuff. If I could help, and I was relaying some information
Yeah.
that I got, and he was thankful for that. Yeah, that was a wild day.
Very tough. And working now in DC, that lingers there heavily because of the Pentagon. And I've toured the Pentagon, and there's a memorial garden and there's a memorial wing where the plane struck, and it's very somber. It's very heart wrenching there still.
So tell me your journey now from Philadelphia to Washington D.C. Like how that all occurred.
So when I left, I went to the talk station WWDB, and no, that's not right. I went to do the Michael Smirkana show on the talk station.
1210.
1210, thank you. Whew.
PhD, right?
Too many stations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I went there and I was with Michael Smirkanish. I was his sort of sidekick and news person for 4 years. And then he wanted to syndicate. So that didn't, the first thing you carve out is the news person. So, I got carved out. They did want me to stay and do like midday updates during the Rush Limbaugh show. But that was, it was a minute of news and then promo everything else on the station. And I thought, this isn't what I'm in radio for. I didn't want to do that. So I left. That was 2007. And I thought, well, I'll go back and do what I did a long time ago with my dad, which was to sell real estate in 2007, just as the market was crashing. It was a very bad decision. So I did it for a while. I tried really hard, but there was, it was just a horrible time to get into it. So friends of mine called me from the Wall Street Journal radio network, and they said, you can come and do business news and markets. And I knew nothing about that. That was far, far, far from anything I'd ever known. I did yuck radio, morning show co-host kind of stuff. So they said, we'll teach you. And they did. And it was baptism by fire, because it was, again, at the time that the markets were crashing and financial, everything was just blowing up. And I learned very quickly. So, what a great experience that was. And I was there for maybe 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a terrific job. But that was one of those jobs that got phased out because the Wall Street Journal, and it was owned, of course, by Fox News, the parent company of Fox News. And so Market Watch dominated, and they took over actually all of those operations. And my friend Jim Battalise from my days on Magic was doing traffic down at WTOP. And he called me up and said, hey, there's an anchoring job here. Would you like to try it out? And I said, well, that's fortunate because my job here is ending. But that would mean moving the family, and I'd never had to do that.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
This decision was not only affecting your life, it was affecting the entire
Everybody.
life. And I know your husband, John, and, and you 3 kids, and
Yeah.
you're like, hey, we're going to move.
Yeah. It was a very difficult decision to make. My oldest son was in college and was going to be finished college and taking on a job. He had also started working at the Wall Street Journal, and he still does. So he stayed on there, and he stayed in New Jersey. The middle guy was going to college, and so he ended up coming down just in time to go into community college close by to where we ended up moving. And then our daughter was going into the 7th grade or the 8th grade. And so, it's one of those things where her recollection of friends is mostly those friends she made in Maryland, and the boys' recollection of their friends is all their New Jersey friends. So our middle son actually ended up staying. He stayed with us for a while, but he moved to New Jersey to go to college at Rider University, and lived with our older son for a while. And it sort of broke up the family, but they weren't young anymore. So, it turned out to be a good decision for John, my husband. He was at the point of retiring. So he retired from UPS. He was a UPS man in downtown Philadelphia for 25 years. And, and he was able to retire and get his pension. And, now he works a nice and easy job. We call it the retirement job. He's not a greeter at Walmart, but he's doing a decent job.
I remember the story. I'm doing an appearance for B101 downtown. I'm trying to think where specifically. And then John heard my voice, and he's like, "Hey, Dan," because he was in that building, and he came over and we were talking. So it was always fun.
You have a very distinctive voice, Dan.
It was very flattering that he was
Yeah.
like, I knew it was you. So I asked you this off before our interview. So you worked in a very historic town, Philadelphia, and now you work in a very historic town, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Similarities and differences in your mind?
Oh, lots. Lots and lots. I can tell you that one of the biggest differences is that DC is largely, the population there transitioned there from another area. So there's not a whole lot of people who are born and raised in DC. There are some, clearly, but for the most part, people work somewhere else, live somewhere else, and move into DC and then move out of DC at some point. Large federal population, and so those jobs come and go. Philadelphia is just what I like to call the salt of the earth people. It's got its rough spots, but I think Philly people are just kind. They're just the salt of the earth people. Give you the shirt off their backs if they had to. They'll make it in any way they can. And, I enjoyed so much meeting the people of Philadelphia.
So all the historic spots, Liberty Bell, seeing
Betsy Ross House.
Yeah. Independence
Alfred
Hall.
Sally. Yeah.
The Rocky Steps, the Art Museum.
Yes.
So you did all those when you lived in the area. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So DC, have you done everything?
I have done a lot. I never took a White House tour, and I regret that. And I'm going to have to do that. That's one thing I do want to do, but I've done most of them. I enjoy. DC is beautiful beyond measure as far as its gardens and its foliage and its greenery and its rolling landscape. It's gorgeous.
Blossoms.
The cherry blossoms right now. It's beautiful. So if there's one thing I love to do, it's to walk around in DC. And there's a lot of trails and paths, and it's wonderful in that respect.
Washington Monument.
Yeah.
I actually did finally 2 years ago. I got the White House tour.
Did you?
Yeah, because I always wanted to do that also.
Yeah.
So anybody wants to do that, just a clue, you have to contact your local senator, the office.
Yes.
And say, "Hi, I'd like to go." And then they say, "Okay," and you need to send in credentials. They do a background check on you and all this stuff. And then you get to finally go. So it was very interesting to see. I think, but you don't get the West Wing.
Right.
I think it's the East Wing that you get to see. So
yeah. It is an incredibly historic town. Some great food in DC. Oh my goodness. One of my favorite places. There's a place called Ted's Bulletin that makes the best grilled cheese and tomato soup you ever had in your life.
That sounds
really
delicious.
good. I know. You'd think it would be something more upscale than that, but I loved it.
So how do you deal with waking up so early in the morning, Joan, for so many years? Like, what's your regimen? And I ask this because hopefully some people that are viewing right now, they're up and coming in radio or
Yeah.
even TV, and it's very difficult to wake up the time you have to wake up.
You know what? Honestly, it's not the waking up during the week at that time. It's trying to sleep on the weekends. There is no sleeping in. So my regimen is I get up at 2:30, and I am out the door by 2:55 ish. And it's I live in Annapolis, so I had to live by the water because it's just one of those things I really wanted to do. So it's about a 40-minute drive for me first thing in the morning. But, it's just me and the truckers and a stray deer here and there. So luckily, I've never met them in person. So that, I get up at 2:30 during the week, but on the weekends, I can never get past 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock, I'll wake up and I'm staring at the ceiling and I just, there's a million things going on in my head. And I eventually just get up and get a cup of coffee because it's do the laundry, whatever, I can't sleep on the weekends, but I love it in that I still, even when I'm done my shift in the morning and it's a long shift that we do from 5 to 10. When I'm done and we've prepared for the next day, I have still a lot of business hours to get things done. So I can still go to the bank and go, take my mom out to lunch or whatever and still have time. But I'm in bed at 7:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30 every day. So.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
To round out our interview, let me just throw out a couple things and the first thing that pops into your mind.
Okay.
The Jersey Shore.
Can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
We're big RVers, and I'm at the Jersey Shore right now in my RV. I can't get away from it. I love it. Yes, I love it. I come here every weekend from April through October. I am here every weekend.
Are you a person that just likes to sit on the beach, or you like to go into the ocean, or?
I know that this is so frowned upon, but I still put my dark tanning oil on and I lie and get as dark as I can get and I read my book. I love being in the sun and sinking my feet in the sand with a good book.
You could say maybe a couple favorite places on the Jersey Shore that you like to go, like Ocean City or Sea Isle or wherever.
I'm an Ocean City girl. I grew up in Summers Point, right across the bay. And I will forever be an Ocean City girl. Usually 12th Street, you can find me and my family. That's where we pretty much gather. We go down by the pier. And, it's either, the word for us is always we're either on the right side or the left side of the pier.
Favorite pizza place there? I know I don't want you to maybe make anybody mad.
I will, and I'll never call it by any other name. It's Macamanco.
Yeah, even though they changed a lot.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's still Macamanco for me.
How about South Philadelphia?
Wow. Where, a restaurant, you mean?
I said whatever pops in your mind. So
okay.
that's the first thing that popped in your mind. Yeah, we could talk about restaurants.
There are a couple of Italian restaurants, and one of them didn't have a name. We had some relatives that lived in South Philly and they said, come on, let's go. And, you go and it looks like a house. And when you go in, it's actually a restaurant. And I don't know the name of it. It was off Passyunk Avenue. And it was the best Italian food I have ever had in my life.
What did you eat there?
Wow, it was a long time ago. I don't even remember.
Have you ever been to the place, that in the Rocky series, he has Adrian's in Rocky Balboa, but that was it's an Italian restaurant where they actually sang like opera.
Yeah.
On Dickinson's. Now I can't think of. I just was looking at my phone to try to figure out the name of the place, but I was there.
You were there,
and they serenade you. They sing to you. It was like really cool. Well, Joan, it was so great catching up with you. Check out Joan mornings. 103.5 FM, WTOP in Washington, D.C.